Hey there, Nerd Nation, imagination connoisseurs, and all y'all in between. Darth Jager coming at you with another episode of When Comics Were Great. This time we're talking about the Dark Horse Comics Company groundbreaking Alien series and whether this series was better than the films from which it was based.
A what? Xenomorph. It's a bug. What exactly are we dealing with here?
At some point after the film Aliens exploded onto the big screen, a small comic book company named Dark Horse managed to secure the rights to publish a comic book inspired by the designs and creations of H.R. Giger and based on the characters and events of the 20th Century Fox films. In July of 1988, Dark Horse Comics released the first issue of their comic book sequel. That's right, this was at the time considered uh, canon to James Cameron's Aliens film. The beginning was a 6 issue miniseries simply called Aliens, later retitled Outbreak, written by Mark Verheiden with just absolutely beautiful illustrations in black and white by Mark A. Nelson. Uh, the Dark Horse Comics were off to a tremendous start. The first issue sold out and was reprinted like 6 times, as was each subsequent issue. And quickly, this 2-year-old company was making a name for itself in the comics world. The story, as I said before, was meant to be a direct sequel to 1986's Aliens. It begins about 10 years after the film, and we quickly catch up with Rebecca Newt Jordan recalling a dream to her counselor in a mental hospital. Meanwhile, Corporal Dwayne Hicks is having his own nightmares as he cools his heels in the brig after getting into yet another drunken brawl. Both characters have been suffering from PTSD in the years since the incident on LV 426. Ripley is nowhere to be found in this book, besides a short mention. The only survivors were a kid, a civilian named Ripley, and Hicks. The kid's a brain case, and Ripley, well, you know what became of her. We don't, actually. There's also a single panel depicting this scene from Aliens when Hicks is splashed with acid blood after they dispatch an alien in the lift.
Get it off!
Hicks meets with his superiors and is told they've located the alien's homeworld, and he's offered a clean slate in exchange for his help leading a mission to obtain a xenomorph specimen. As the story progresses, the reader's introduced to an evangelical preacher who worships the xenomorph as a messiah, as well as members of the Bionational Corporation who have got their hands on an alien queen that they plan to use for bioweapons contracts with the military. Hicks rescues Newt from the mental hospital where she was about to undergo brain surgery and smuggles her aboard the ship and puts her into hypersleep in the ship's rear compartment. Of course, nothing goes as planned. There are betrayals, and the story twists and turns like a twisty-turny thing. The story even gives us a glimpse of the space jockey alien from the original film, decades before Prometheus would ruin them by turning them into the engineers. Amongst the many characters and parallel stories about corporate greed, fanaticism, the cruelty of the military industrial complex, the story at its core is one of how two people, Newt and Hicks, overcome their personal trauma and learn to live again. A very human story indeed at the heart of it all. And that's what the best sci-fi always does. It tells us these human stories wrapped in the veneer of future history. After the book's initial run between July 1988 and July 1989, the miniseries was collected into a trade paperback. It was released in November of 1989 and featured this terrific painted cover by Dave Dorman. Then in 1992, the release of Alien 3 would make all these stories moot. Or would it? When the filmmakers decided to unceremoniously kill Hicks and Newt off screen in Alien 3, work was already underway to future proof these Dark Horse comic book stories in the form a series of novelizations by Steve and his daughter Stephanie Perry. The writers changed the names of the main characters from Hicks and Newt to Wilkes and Billy, changed the names of some of the locations, and boom, the story works in the new continuity. Then, in August of 1996, Dark Horse would reprint the comic under the title Aliens Outbreak. Not only were the character names changed to match the novelizations, but the series was also released in color for the very first time. Now, back in the day, many people, like including myself, believed that this absolutely fantastic black and white comic book was the first time a comic company had ever taken a shot at bringing the alien to life in illustrated form. And years later, I found out that I was wrong. Back in 1979, Heavy Metal magazine published a terrific adaptation of Ridley Scott's terrifying film. But we'll get to that in another video. The bottom line is Dark Horse's Aliens Book 1 is an extremely well written comic book miniseries with some fantastic, highly detailed, atmospheric artwork from a time in comics when talent actually mattered, when folks didn't get into the business unless they were great at what they did. And Mark Verheiden and Mark A. Nelson were and are great at what they do. I highly recommend this book and its two sequels to anyone out there who loves those first two Alien films and has an appreciation for interesting, compelling storytelling. So while Book 1, aka Outbreak, and its two sequels that I'll review in future videos, Nightmare Asylum and Earth War, are great and offer a far more satisfying continuation of the Alien story than Alien 3 and Resurrection ever did. They certainly don't compare to Scott's Alien or Cameron's Aliens, but how could they? I mean, those films are cinematic classics. More than just memorable, these are iconic examples of the best of science fiction. From the world building, the design language, the characters, and of course, H.R. Giger and Stan Winston's incredible creature work. But what do y'all think? Have you ever read the Dark Horse Aliens comics or their novelizations? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you made it this far, thank you. And I invite you to please like, share, subscribe, smash that bell for notifications. And remember, we live every day, but we only die once. So make today count. Later.